Good morning, everyone. This is LV Spencer, and today we're going to talk about the fillable resource record, the F6455, and I'll be your host today. I'm LV Spencer, the logistics lead for the Southwest and Rocky Mountain Division. Our focus today is on the resource record, the F6455. That's a record that's very valuable during a DRO and especially valuable pre-DRO. And today I want to cover basically four areas. Is basically what is it used for, when to use it, and who uses it. And then I'll give you a demonstration of the 6455. The 6455 is an electronic form that you can fill out and download from the exchange, and I'll demonstrate that to you. And it's a record that you use for vendors to record their basic contact information, and then also to record what conversations you may have had with a vendor or a facility. It can be used pre-DRO, and I highly encourage people to use it before, because basically if you have a listing of vendors or organizations you want to contact during a DRO, if you already had that 6455 filled out, then you're all set and ready to go as to who to contact and things like that. So the 6455 allows us to have a continuity as we, as volunteers come in and volunteers go out, and as leads change and things. So it's a really good source to maintain that continuity of communications about who our vendors are, who our facilities are, things like that. So who uses it? Everybody in logistics uses the 6455. Procurement will use it to record vendors that they've contacted, vendors they've talked with. Same thing with supply, they will use it. In-kind donations is going to use it to record people that want to make an in-kind donation, and also those that don't contact again because they've already said no one time, so you don't want to continue to follow up with people that are going to say no. And then the warehouse will use it to keep a record of vendors that they've used, and facilities uses it. And one of the things that facilities will use the 6455 is typically they will have a file folder for every facility that they use, every one that they've opened, every one that they close, agreements, ones that they've contacted and have said no, they're not able to help. So facilities is a big user of the 6455, and there should be one complete for every facility that's being used or potentially being used on a DRO. LSAP will use it, especially as they go around and make contacts with local government officials, with other law enforcement agencies, and it gives them a good contact, a record of contact information. And then transportation will use it as well as they make contact with rental places and things. One of the nice things about the 6455 is that it's a structured form that sort of does away with scrap paper and little notes here and there. So if all those things that we typically would write down on scrap paper or on a notepad or something, if we have it there on the 6455 for a vendor, then we have that communication channel that we can keep consistent information going on with it. So some of the best practices for the 6455 is, and a lot of this will make a little bit more sense once I show you the 6455, is you always want to try to store electronic copy on the common drive if possible. You can print it out and do handwriting, but I have found that if you can do the electronic fillable form and just keep that on a common drive where people can come and go on the DRO, they can see it out there. At the end or during the DRO, you may want to place copies of that in the different activity files that you may have had. So if you have a vendor file, you want to put it in there, a facility file, things like that, so that other people who may not have access to the common drive can actually see it. And you know, several of our volunteers may be challenged in accessing the common drive, so that gives them a hard copy to look at. And then at the end of the DRO, you want to print a final copy and keep it for each one of the 6455s and give copies to the chapter/region and the national headquarters. So what that does is it allows you to pass on any capacity building that you've done during the DRO. So if you've during the DRO found additional vendors that they can use on the next DRO for that chapter or region, then you have a record already established as to what they've done, how they used them on a DRO in the past. And then you also want to send it up to the national headquarters, because later on, the national headquarters maybe get some questions about something that happened on a DRO 6 months to a year later. And that 6455 will have a record of what's happened, especially on facilities. You know, was the closing done and things like that. So you want to make sure that that is with the NHQ as well. Now, I've come up with a standard naming convention to help me ease the search when I do a search for a 6455 on the computer. So the way that I do my naming, and this is just my preference, you don't have to follow this, is I always start off with an RR, and that RR stands for a resource record, and then a 6455, the form number, and then I'll put in the DR number, like a 163-13, whatever the DR number is, and the DR name, the vendor name, and then the date. And when I do the date, I typically like to use a format, and this sort of helps with the search, is I do the year, month, day format. So today would be like 2013, 11, 14. And by doing this, this helps, so like it helps you in doing searches. So if I just want a listing of all the 6455s in my search area, I'll just put 6455 and I'll get them. If I just want 6455s for a certain DR number, then I can just put in that DR number. Or if I know that I created this back in, say, 2013-06, June of 2013-06, then I can do a search there. But the important thing is whatever naming convention you have, it should be consistent in the naming, especially in vendor names, because sometimes we may call a vendor by they're doing business as, or they may have abbreviations and things like that. But always try to be consistent in your naming. So those are some of the best practices on the 6455. And let me go to the next one. So I want to give you a demonstration right now. First of all, I'm going to show you how out on the Exchange you can download the 6455. And then we're going to show you how to fill it in, and then how you can save it. So let's get started with the demonstration. And the first place I want to go to is out to the Exchange. And hopefully I could still have it all up here and running for us. And there's the Exchange. And it looks like I've timed out, so I'm going to go ahead and log back in. So to get to the 6455, it's just like all the other disaster forms. It's all right there together. So I'm going to go to Our Services. Then I'm going to go down to Disaster Services. Click on Disaster Services. And now you'll get a little narrative here about Welcome to the Disaster Services Topic Hub. And you'll see where the disaster forms are listed alphabetically or by number. You could go in and do it by resource record. In this case, I know the number already, so I'm going to click on the number. here's a listing of the disaster forms by number, and you'll notice all these start, well, most of them start with F, and I'm going to go down to 6455, and so here's the resource record, and I would just click on that, and that would bring up the resource record. For the sake of time, I've already downloaded the resource record, and this is what it looks like. So you'll get that, and when you get it on your screen, you will want to save it to your desktop or save it to a file, so you always have it readily available. There's a couple of forms that I always have on my desktop. It's a Form 6409, which is the requisition, and the 6455, which is the resource record. So let's go over this a little bit, and then I'll show you one that's filled out. The 6455 has a strong focus on in-kind donations, but it's not limited to in-kind donations. So a lot of these fields you'll see will not be applicable, that they're more applicable to in-kind donations. But that still, still use it even though you're not using in-kind donations. So it starts off with some donor information and contact information, and that's just basic contact information, and that proves to be really valuable as people change over and last week I contacted somebody, but Mike's here now, and Mike needs to go back and contact this person. And then there's the descriptions of what they're going to be providing, and with the donor intent, that may be blank, and I'll show you an example here. And then you're going to get down into the some more information about the usage and the shipping and the loan and what's going to happen to the excess, especially if it's a donated item and there's leftover products. And then there's the account information, and I've never used that before. But here's one of the nice things is you can record the dates that you've had conversations. So I'll correct the date. I didn't like that. And then you can put in the time of that record. And then you can put in notes and who recorded them. And you can keep, as you save this file, then you can just keep a running total. So like facilities, they'll put in there, we contacted so-and-so about being a facility, and they said no. Or they may have a record of where they've done the opening of a facility, they've done the closing of the facility, they've done the inspection of the facility. And it gives you an idea of who actually did all that. So it sort of summarizes the contact that they've had with that facility. And the same thing applies to vendors. If you've done local purchases, where did we do the local purchases at? Where did we get the in-kind donation? Who's our ABIS contacts, and things like that. So there's the blank 6455. Now I would like to take us over and show you one that I've already filled out. I filled this one out maybe a week or so ago, maybe not that long. But this is a 6455 that I did for an in-kind donation. And so with the DR, typically you're going to put in the DR number, and I always put in the DR title as well. And in this case, it's just local disasters. This was a donation, so it's I solicited. It's a donation, and could it be a purchase? So these you just want to click on with your mouse, or I think your space bar does the same thing. So it just gives me an indication there. And the company I'm dealing with is Nestle Waters, North American, their address, and all this is pretty well free text. Acknowledged name is, this is what would be used if you're doing the in-kind donation, and who would you be sending like a thank you letter to. So typically this is going to be like community services or public affairs, or maybe the CEO or owner of the company. And then over on the right-hand side, you're going to put in the contact information. In this case, it's Annette Dunn and who I'm going to call and their phone numbers and things. So the description, you're going to put in there what are they providing, and some of this may be very broad and general, maybe just office supplies, like if you're doing the local Staples store, or it may be you know, a staging area for vehicles if you're doing a parking lot area type things. And then the donor intent, if there's actual quantities, or if it's this is really helpful if it's only one particular item, but if it's more than one particular item, you're just going to do the product description. And then there's I'm the point of contact on it. And then and if this is being, you know, ordered just for one time for a specific reason, then you can put in the need by date and the local ship to address. In this case, you can put in a drop trailer. In this case, it's not going to be a drop trailer, and I don't need a refrigerated trailer. The shipping is either going to be by the donor or courier. In this case, it's going to be Red Cross, and we have to pick up the water. And then on down here, I have put in the date. I should have put in the time and who I spoke with and when and who actually spoke with them. So now that we have this 6455, the next, when we go to pick up water, I'll just add to this, and we can keep it going on and on with this since it's a local disaster. So that's a 6455 printed out, and on your system, you will want to save this, as I mentioned, on a common drive so other people can see it and get access to it as well. So this is a PDF file, so you just, and it saves all the material, all the things that you've entered in there as well. So just save it to your file. Now let me try to get back to the presentation. Okay, so that's the demonstration of the 6455. I'll just sort of wrap it up here, is that you hopefully download it from the exchange, fill it in. Everybody in logistics should be pretty well familiar with the 6455. Save it, make sure you send out copies, and keep copies because it's a great tool for building capacity, and it's also a great tool to do research on against. So if you want to go back and find out what happened during this with this vendor, what happened with this facility, who did they talk with, who did they do this, and things. So you can record that history as well, as long as with all the contact information. Check your email inboxes for future webinars. And if you know of people that should be added to the invite list, just ask them to send me a email, and I'll be glad to add them to it. So this concludes the formal part of the webinar. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I'll be remaining on the line for a few more minutes to answer any questions you may have.